Vice Chair Geringer,
Here.
Member Arnrich,
Here.
Member Nowak,
Here.
Member Thorpe.
Here.
Thank you. All members are present.
The next item on the agenda is public comment. Christina, have we received any requests for comment?
No public comment.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from December 3rd, 2020. Are there any changes, comments, so forth from the committee? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment?
Nope, I
Okay,
don't have any comments from the public.
okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move approval, Geringer.
Okay,
Second.
motion by Geringer,
Second, Arnerich.
second by Arnert. I guess we need a roll call vote, right?
Yes. Member Arnrich,
Yes.
Member Nowak,
Abstain.
Member Thorpe,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Geringer,
Aye.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
The motion passes by majority vote with Member Nowak and Member Thorpe abstaining.
Chair Butt,
Yes.
can we run the COVID video?
Yes.
Thank you.
Always forget that.
No worries.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live-streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, before we go to the next item, I want to go back. I just noticed that one of the consent calendar items involved a contract with PG&E, and I would like you to show me as not voting on that. I have a conflict of interest because my architectural firm has not voting on that particular item.
If it has to do with PG&E, I also have to recuse myself. This is Member Nowak.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is legislative update. Lindsay will present
Chair?
that item.
Chair Bud, I think we only did the minutes. We didn't actually vote on the consent calendar yet.
Oh, I thought we did the minutes. Oh.
We did the minutes, and then we needed to do the consent calendar.
Oh, okay. All right. That's what I, yeah. Okay, the consent calendar, anybody want to take anything off of the consent calendar? Are there any requests from the public? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move approval of the consent calendar, Garinger.
Second, Noack?
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Arnrich,
Yes.
Committee Member Noack,
Yes, except for the PG&E item. I have to recuse myself.
okay.
4-8.
Committee Member Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Geringer,
Aye.
and Chair Butt.
Yes, except for item E.
Great. Okay, the motion passes. How do you want me to read this, Terry Ann?
The consent calendar passes unanimously with the item, I believe it was E, pulled off the consent calendar, the PG&E item with Noack and Butt abstaining.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, now we're down to legislative update, and Lindsay will present this item.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. 2021 is off to a really eventful start already, which is why I'm glad that we're joined this morning by both our federal advocates, Gus Maples and Jason Ty, and our state advocate, Mark Watts. And they're going to give you an update on, topics relevant to the work that we're doing at CCTA. So I think this morning we'll start with our friends from the eastern side of the country. So Gus and Jason, do you guys want to get started and give an update?
Hi, good morning, everyone. To those of you who I haven't met yet, it's good to be here this morning. As you may have seen yesterday, outside of some of the other news going on, both Senate races in Georgia have been called. So we're now looking at least nominal control for Democrats in both the House as well as the Senate, since Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will have a tie-breaking vote in the 50-50 split Senate now. Some of the recent legislative activity that's been going on at the end of the year included the COVID stimulus bill. That was about $900 billion that was included in addition to the regular year-end appropriations. That stimulus bill did include approximately $14 billion for transit. This was less than what APTA and some of the industry stakeholders had been pushing for, but was still very close to the number that was in Speaker Pelosi's Democratic Priorities House proposal for this stimulus. In addition to that, there were the annual, like I said, transportation and housing and urban development appropriations for the upcoming fiscal year 2021. Those include discretionary grants such as build grants, in addition to the regular formula programs for surface transportation of federal highways, federal transit and railroads, et cetera. Also, I think since our last meeting, President-elect Biden has nominated a Secretary of Transportation for his upcoming administration. That pick is Mayor Pete Buttigieg from South Bend, Indiana. He ran for president in this last primary, and he has been chosen to lead the Department of Transportation. As I alluded to, there is a very tight margin in Senate control. So I would imagine over the next week or two, the committees will have to sort of work out some rules and membership as they determine how even things will be there. But once that gets settled, I would expect that the cabinet picks will probably see committee action markups to approve them, to confirm them for their positions within the coming weeks and month or so ahead. new leadership at the department also leads us into the FAST Act surface transportation reauthorization. It does sound like the Democrats in the House, as well as the incoming administration, have an eye on transportation and infrastructure, the effects that that has in addition to stimulus efforts in our current economy, have that as a major priority for the upcoming Congress. The current FAST Act was extended from its expiration last September for 1 calendar year. And the HR 2, the Invest in America Act, as it's called, that the House drafted up last year, is probably going to be the framework as the House reconsiders, possibly as soon as February, its legislative package as they work on finalizing this time the surface transportation reauthorization process. That bill, as you probably remember, included approximately $500 billion. That's a plus up in spending across all transportation modes, and it included several new community-focused grant opportunities. And then just a little bit of new news. Just this week, the U.S. Department of Transportation did announce an interim rule that could help establish some parity for domestically manufactured autonomous vehicles, similar to the work going on at Easy Mile. This is important because important to note the value of the meetings we have and that the CCTA team as a whole has with the folks here in DC. Last spring, when several members of the CCTA team and staff came out, we had meetings with leadership at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the acting director there, and brought this up specifically. So we are working with Lindsay on scheduling, as well as with the congressional delegation, some other departmental meetings as well in the upcoming months to continue those relationships. I think that sort of covers everything at my level, if there are any questions.
Bill, you got a question? Okay, I thought I saw a hand go up. Any other questions from anyone?
So maybe we can move on, and Mark, you can give an update on what's happening at the state level.
Hi, I'm having a little fragile reception here, so I picked up on the fact that you've asked me to speak. So the update I provide today from the last time we met is a little thin. There's been some activity, but probably the most important changes have taken place in the leadership of the 2 transportation committees here in Sacramento. On the Assembly side, I think it's well known by now that Chairman Frazier has moved on to chair the Assembly Governmental Organization Committee, and replacing him is Laura Friedman from Glendale area. She's been a strong supporter of SB1 and more particularly alternative transportation modes, and we look forward to her leadership. In the Senate side, Senator Bell had been termed out, and his replacement is Senator Lena Gonzalez from Long Beach. She's fairly, probably one of the more recently elected senators. She came in midterm last session, and we don't have a lot of experience working with her on transportation matters, but she comes out of the Long Beach City Council. So I will also add that in both committees, there's fair representation of the Bay Area on both committees. 5 members in both committees from the Bay Area generally, and in particular in the Assembly, Assemblymember Wicks is the Contra Costa representative, which is beneficial, I think. And we have Senator Skinner on the Senate side. When the legislature convened briefly in December, and as they departed, they announced their joint priorities for the coming year. That includes housing production, broadband access, and more policing reforms. I think we'll see some more activity in that area. And of course, it goes without saying that response to the economic toll due to the response to the pandemic. In fact, on that point, this week, the governor announced a program for a jobs and recovery effort, with looking for $4.5 billion in the budget process. And that's probably a good point in time to indicate that we are anticipating the budget to be made available by the governor and announced tomorrow. By the Constitution, he's required to do it by the 10th, and he's indicated that they'll be coming forward tomorrow. In anticipation of that, the Assembly Budget Chairman has scheduled a budget overview for Monday. So we'll get a little bit more detailed examination of what's in the budget. I'll be able to report to Lindsay and your leadership if there's anything to be concerned about in the transportation area, or will it be a settled year for the transportation budget. And I think with that, I'll draw my presentation to a close at this point in time and ready for any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? I don't see any. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this?
I don't see any.
I heard somebody.
Oh, it's Christina. No, I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Okay. Let's see. There's no action on this, but a lot of good news. I think we have a lot of things to look forward to. Okay, the next item is acceptance of the annual audit reports, comprehensive annual financial report and auditor's report for the authority board for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. Brian Kelleher will present this item.
Good morning, Chair Butt and Commissioners. I'm going to share my screen with you and do a short presentation on the CAFR. This is our annual financial report for the fiscal period ending June 30th, 2020. What a year that was. Let me share here. Okay. So this is the fiscal annual report known as the CAFR. We have an audit done every year. This year it was done by MGO. We have Annie Louie here who is going to speak towards the end of my presentation. And as I go through the CAFR, I will do my best to explain what's in there. So what is the CAFR? The CAFR is presented in 3 sections. So in the beginning of the CAFR, the front section is the introductory section. It has a letter of transmittal that talks about the activities that happen within the fiscal year. There's also some reporting that CCTA does. So when we complete the CAFR, we submit it to the GFOA, and what we look is for an award. We get an award for an excellence in financial reporting. So this year we received for the 2019 is our 8th consecutive year for receiving the award for the CAFR. So again, when we're completed with the CAFR and we present it to the authority board, I'll submit it to see if we have an excellence in financial reporting as well. So with the help of MGO, we try and put forth our best transparency and submit for our award. So in there, in the introductory section, we have an organizational chart. In the middle of the CAFR is the financial section. There's the independent auditor's report. We have a clean audit. There's the management and discussion and analysis. That's where we break down all of the revenues and expenditures by departments and programs and do our best to explain everything that's happened at CCTA within the last fiscal year. We also have the government-wide financial statements, and that's going to have your assets, your liabilities, and when we get to the notes to the financials, that really dives into every level and explains everything that we have in there. Our OPEB and pension is one of the key components in there that we talk about, our liabilities there as well. And then in the back of the CAFR, we have the statistical section, and that's just additional financial, economic, and demographic information for CCTA, as well as Contra Costa County in general. And if you go into that section, you can kind of look at a number of the reports, and it goes back 10 years. So you can see our sales tax growth, you can see our population growth, and you can kind of see who our major employers are in Contra Costa County. So our statement of net position. So this takes your balance sheet. For those of you who have seen this at your own city levels and agency levels, the most important things that you're going to look for is your assets and your liabilities. What makes CCTA different is we do not hold any general assets. We have office equipment, we have computer systems, we have leasehold improvements that are depreciated over the life. So down at the bottom of capital assets, you're going to see $204,000. Again, this is all in thousands. So our cash and investments, and if you look at the 2019 year, our total assets was $195 million. Now it's down to $160 million. So as we look at our cash and investments, so that's down about $30 million. So as we're putting forth and we're contributing and we're building these capital projects, you know, Measure J holds money over the years. We collect it, we start building these projects, we issue bonds, and then we start using the funds received that we have and the cash we have on hand to pay these things. So you can see cash went down about $30 million. We did 2 withdrawals of about $15 million each during the fiscal year 2020. The restricted cash and investments, that's money we have set aside in the bonds fund. So you can see it went from 28 million down to 13 million. We had $15.5 million in bond proceeds left from our 2017 bonds. So we utilize that for our capital projects in there. So our receivables is going to be sales tax receivables for the months of July and August that make up our fiscal year 2020, June 30th. We also have some federal, state, and local receivables. As we build these projects like the 680 southbound lanes, we also have the 684. There's a lot of construction funds going out. We seek reimbursement, and that's why the receivables would be 32 million. The deferred outflows and inflows is the timing of things and amortization of refunding debt. We also have our liabilities. You can see our liabilities slightly went down about $18.6 million. Again, we made a payment on debt. So as we get to the bottom, there's not much of a change. Again, we don't hold assets. We build these things and we give them to the cities. We give them to the state, to Caltrans. And so our net position is always going to be a negative until we have no debt. And we have our debt service that's scheduled out to 2034, which is the end of Measure J. So that's going to continue, and it'll continue to decrease, and we'll amortize off the bonds as well. So these numbers will start to go down. In general, this is your statement of activities. It's kind of like an income statement. It's got a bunch of accruals in here. The biggest thing that we look at is sales tax. And if we go back about 10 months, we started to enter the pandemic, working with HDL, our sales tax consultant. We thought revenues were going to come in around $80 million for the fiscal year. It was quite a surprise to see how people continue to spend. It shows a lot that, you know, we've been talking about Contra Costa as a commuter town. A lot of people were working from home. A lot of people were still spending money. A lot of people were still buying things. A lot of people were buying cars on our sales tax analysis as they were going to start commuting via cars. So you can see our sales tax revenue came in at $93.5 million. Other general revenues, that's going to be just majority of that is investment income, some small miscellaneous income. So the majority is investment income. We did have to do some draws. So over the last, when we invest our funds, we go out and we buy things in the 2, 3, and sometimes 4-year term. As these things mature, we have market value. As interest rates go down, so does our investments value goes up quite a bit. I think we ended the year at a market value increased our investment was about 2.2 million. But during the year when I did the draws of $15 million, we were able to capitalize on the market value and get some extra interest earning. Program revenues, as we mentioned, there's a lot of construction going on. So we had about $86 million in revenue for the capital projects and the programs that we have. In the following couple pages, slides, I'll go through more in detail what all of that was. And then the expenses, administrative, you can see that it went from about $2 million to $5.6 million. In there, we utilized probably about $3.1 million of Measure C funds that was reserved for the reauthorization of the TEP. I'll go into detail of that on the next slide, but that was a major component of that. Project management, which is our projects division. We did not have some PPM funding this year, which pays for some of the salaries for us to go out and talk about our projects and programs. So some of these salaries were reallocated back to some individual departments. Programs is based off a percentage of sales tax received. Transportation projects, as you know, we had the two major capital projects going on this year that Ivan has talked about in the last few meetings. So you can see this year the construction moved along pretty well with the ability to work longer hours and take some of the lanes, some of our expenditures, and then the timing of all of these construction projects coming to fruition. Net position, again, is just part of the outstanding debt that we have based on the cash that we have on hand. So some financial summary and financial highlights for the year ending 2020. Sales tax revenues that I discussed. Federal, state, and local revenues was about $83.8 million. The capital projects was $78 million. Congestion management, we got about $1 million. The TFCA funds was about $1.7 million. And then the Momentum transportation, we had the CalSTA funds that we received about $2.3 million of the $3.5 million grant that was recognized in last year. And then our administrative salaries and benefits. This is something that we always try and highlight. We have a 1%, 1% of the sales tax can be allocated to salaries and benefits for the people that are working in administration, and that's a percentage of their time that they spend on the administrative side. We talked about the $4.5 million and the $3.1 million for the TEP in the March 2020 ballot. Program expenditures we discussed. Local street maintenance, $18.8 million. That goes back to the local cities and the county to help do some pavement management. Transportation projects were $115 million. Again, the I-680 SR4 interchange was $43 million. The I-80 carpool was $51.6. We also had some major roadways, Kirker Pass, and some BART projects that we also contributed to that were capital projects. And the debt service on an annual basis remains approximately flat. It's relatively stays about the same. It was $40.2 million. Of that $40.2 million, $18.6 million goes towards principal. Transfers into the general fund, we utilized the remaining project bond proceeds from the 2017 bond, and that was $15.5 million. And then when we get to the notes to the financial statements that's in the CAFR, this is really where you spend a lot of time trying to talk about the history, transparency, giving any kind of reader the investments. As we go out and we sell bonds, a lot of questions that I may get are people asking questions about our financials, and we're a little bit different from cities and agencies because we don't carry a lot of assets. We don't have a lot of street improvements. We don't have all of the infrastructure. So we're going to have the negative net balance there. But again, the notes kind of tells the story about the agency. So one of the things is the GASB puts out pronouncements every year. With COVID and the pandemic, they postponed a lot of the effective. Every year they're changing the rules and asking us or giving us guidance to help add a little transparency. There's nothing that's going to be effective in the next couple of years that's going to have a major impact to CCTA. But it's always good to point that out. So note 3 is our cash and investments. That starts on page 37 in the CAFR. We have $125.9 million, $107 million is investments. We use an outside firm, Public Trust, to help us with the investments. And then we have kind of a money market fund, which is LAIF, which is controlled by the state of California. So when we make payments on a weekly basis, we draw down. When we receive money, we put money back in LAIF. And then we have $13.5 million as we collect sales tax revenues. We take a portion, 1/6 and 1/12 of the interest payments, and we put it aside and we set it aside for the interest payments that are due in September and March. And so when we look at note 6, long-term debt, that really goes through our bonds. If you'd like to read that and you have additional questions, please reach out to me. But we have about $450 million in outstanding bonds, and we're going to pay down about $19 million for the next several years. On a side note, we'll be coming back to the board and the APC in the next few months as we're going to be moving forward to refinance some $100 million bonds as well. And then we have the swap agreement, which is the $100 million that we have, and that's all based off of interest rates. And when interest rates go down, the cash out, if we were to pay it out today, we would have to come out with a $33.8 million as of 6/30/20. And we have to post collateral when it goes over $40 million. One of the highlights for CCTA is notes 7 and 8. And I take a lot of pride and I spend a lot of time working on this. This is our pension plan and other post-employment healthcare benefits, and that starts on page 48. When I started here several years ago, one of the things I realized is we should be paying down our pension and our OPEB because we pay interest. If you have a liability, you're paying 7.25% interest, which is the discount rate there. So when we put together our CAFR, we've made a number of payments towards our pension plan over the years. And when it works with the CalPERS, we always report 1 year in the arrears. It takes them time to produce their documents. Their documents usually come out in late August, September. So we're always reporting 1 year behind. All of your agencies do this as well. Based on our payments, based on fiscal year 2019 pension reporting, we have a liability of $65,000. And that's very impressive from my point of view. And in our 2020 CAFR, the OPEB, over the years, now we have a $426,000 asset. What that means is we have $426,000 above what's projected to pay out for the lifespan of the employees and the current situation we have. What this does is it gives us a little bit of a cushion, just in case the economy turns, the interest rates go down on all of our investment earnings. We can remain fully funded. What will happen also if we have reduced sales tax revenues in years, we can reduce the amount that we pay for OPEB. OPEB is one of those agencies that you pay as you go, pay what you feel comfortable with. So if needed, if I need to make some budget assessments, I can lower our rate that we pay. We currently pay about 9.9% of the salaries and benefit, or the salaries for the employees. Net position and fund balances, again, the unrestricted is $515 million. The authority carries debt. One of the things that we've tracked since the beginning of time is Measure C's and Measure J's commitment to capital projects. So what we've contributed to capital projects is $1.8 billion. That's a large dollar amount. That we also have some external funding that we're receiving that helps contribute to that $1.8 million, but also, for 42.5% of the authority's sales tax revenue, that's a lot of money. So we have this statistical section, which I mentioned in the beginning. You can look at the financial trends, the revenue capacity, the debt capacity, some economic and demographic information, some operating information in there. There's a lot of good details. So with that, we have Annie Louie from MGO. She's going to talk about the CAFR. She's going to talk about what their role was in the CAFR and give you an update and also ask questions as we move on. Some remaining audit items that MGO and CCTA is working on. We have the single audit report. We have the report to the authority board, the management letter, and then we have the compliance audits. Due to COVID, due to some everybody trying to learn how to work from home and everybody's busy schedules, some of these things are going to be completed in January, and they'll be presented to the board in February. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Annie. Annie is here. Annie, please turn on your...
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. And thank you, Brian, for that very detailed presentation. As Brian had mentioned at the beginning, we were able to provide an unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements. That is the highest level assurance that you can achieve under any financial statements audit. And also as part of that, normally what I would also present on is any deficiencies in internal controls that we may have come across as part of our audit process. I'm happy to report that we do not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls that we identified as part of the audit. Also, there are a list of other required communications that would come forth in the audit report that will come with the single audit as well. And that report will include items such as any corrected or uncorrected audit misstatements that are significant to the authority's financial statements, any omissions in financial presentation or disclosures, i.e. your notes to the financial statements, or any unusual items that we feel is important to bring to the attention of the authority. So I'm happy to report there are no unusual transactions or any of the above mentioned items as part of the audit. It was a pretty smooth audit, even though it was done entirely remotely this year. And so I have to thank the authority's management and everyone that had participated in audit for their cooperation and assistance this year. And with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Brian or Annie? Newell?
Questions for Brian. Well, first of all, great. As usual, Brian, you're a rock star in my book when it comes to accounting. And there is good news particularly on the pension, and we are a unique agency that we have paid forward to keep us balanced with only a $65,000 shortfall. But CalPERS is also lowering their discount rate, and they have that. So we've done a projection forward what that impact is for this upcoming year.
Yes, there in the notes, what we do is when we work with MGO, there's a change, in the discount rate. Should it go down 1% or should it go up 1%? If it was to go up 1%, which is most likely never going to happen, we have a larger asset. But it is down to 7.15% now, 7.25%. And so that's where we're sitting at 2019 is in the sweet spot, 65.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear. CalPERS has set a schedule to lower that rate.
They've been lowering it over the last several fiscal years.
Right, and that's projected. So that's knowing what they're going to do. They've already said that. There's another one that's coming up. So my question is not the theoretical, specifically with that next rate, what in that rate reduction that they've already told us and they published. I sat on the CalPERS committee and they said, here's what we're doing, get ready. So with those discounts, what do we see forward versus backwards? Because this is a backwards look and we're a year behind. So going forward, what do we see at the end of this year? Are we going to estimate that our shortfall would be?
Yeah, if they make action to lower it more currently, like you're talking about, obviously the amount, our deficit will increase just because that our expected return over the life expectancy of the employees and the agency. We would have to earn more in interest income in the year to make up the difference. I could see it going down. And again, I would personally make sure that I'm tracking that, and I will make sure that we bring something to the board to offset that. Our goal and our responsibility at CCTA is to ensure that that's fully paid. Every agency has to pay it at some point. We're a little different based off of our sunsets and different things like that. And I'll keep that all in mind, and I will be in front of you if it goes in a negative way, at any possible way, to work with Tim and make sure that we have the best action plan in place to address it when it happens.
That's why you're a rock star. But you're right. You mentioned that an important point, particularly for maybe our newer board members. We're an agency. We're done in 2034, so we need to be fully funded, and that's always a good sunset horizon to be looking at. But I would just say on the OPED, it's great. I mean, there's no other agency around that's in that kind of a position, having that positive of balance. But Brian, you said, well, we could lower our rate. No, we can't. And the reason why that one's actually even more critical, or as critical, or in some ways more, that we sunset in 2034, there is nobody to make that up. So whatever that pool is, that pool's got to be there to meet the commitments that we've made. So I would suggest that we stick with it. And what got most cities behind in public agencies across the board was in the 90s with the returns they got. It says, oh, the returns are so high, they're twice what we expect. We won't make payments. But the theory is, it's like paying a loan. You keep paying the same amount based on the expectation, regardless of your returns, because returns go up and down. When you get to the end point, you will be in the right position. And that's sort of a mathematical model. So just a caution. I mean, it's wonderful that we're in that position, but a caution. What is today, January 7th, what's the swap liability right now?
I saw it down to about 33 million. We get an email on a monthly basis from Bank of America, as well as our consultants that show us what it is at the end of every month, and it's about $33 million. You know, in the last couple of days, interest rates have slightly gone up on the 10-year Treasury. That will have some kind of positive effect for us. But again, the likelihood of us ever having to post collateral is very slim. I don't want to say never, because we never know what's going to happen in our economy. Nobody ever saw all the things we've seen in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, that's great. And that's good news. And I have to say, and maybe it's mine, you know, I've been focused on this swap since 2005. Everybody see the word in there that was notional? Notional means theoretical. I thought that was great. And was that in last year's? I couldn't find my copy. I don't remember seeing notional. That is a term actually only used for swaps. If you look it up as a definition, it relates to the theoretical value of the swap. So anyway, whoever put that in there, you're smart. Thank you. Nice job overall. This is great. Good news. Incredibly well done.
Other comments or questions? Teresa?
So Newell, thank you for bringing up the swap, which I smiled because I knew that you would. But Brian, I think just as when I came onto the authority, it might be good with the new authority board members to provide that. I think it was kind of a one-page description. Everyone else here is probably municipal, you know, finance, much more savvy than I was, but it was helpful to have that swap description of how CCTA went through this, and Newell's I know has pushed on this regularly, so I think that background would be helpful.
I'm happy to look at it, but I used to trade derivatives, so I'm pretty savvy on swaps and derivatives, so happy to take a look at it, but I'm pretty familiar with that stuff.
I didn't want to presume others' backgrounds, but it was helpful. So thank you, Sue.
Okay, anyone else? Are there any members of the public who want to comment? Christina?
I do not see anybody's hand raised.
Okay, we need a motion to accept the annual audit report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Newell and second by whom?
Noack.
Okay, Noack.
Yeah.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Okay, Committee Member Arnick,
Yes.
Committee Member Noack,
Yes.
Committee Member Thorpe, Committee Member Thorpe.
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Chair Geringer
Aye.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
The next item on the agenda is the Innovate 680, Interstate 680 northbound express lanes completion, project 8009. Authorization to execute task order number 1 under agreement number 550 with Beverage and Diamond PC for legal services. Stephanie, who will present this item?
Good morning. Happy New Year, Chair and Commissioners. Can you see my screen and hear me okay? I see a nod.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning again. My name is Stephanie Hugh, and I'm the Director of Projects at the Authority. Agenda item 5C is an action item seeking your approval to execute task order number 1 under agreement number 550 with Beverage and Diamond for project-specific legal services for northbound 680 Express Lane completion project. And before I discuss the staff recommendation this morning, I would like to spend some time to provide an update for the project. The northbound 680 Express Lane completion project is one of 6 projects in the Innovate 680 program. The goals of the program are to increase person throughput, create mode shift, and provide a more shared mobility options along the 680 corridor in Contra Costa. Through an integrated approach, Innovate 680's goal is to maximize the efficiency of the 680 corridor through technology and become the first connected corridor in the Bay Area. Over the past few years, several studies were completed for the 680 corridor. A suite of strategies were recommended to address congestion and improve transit options on the corridor. The goal of the Innovate 680 program is to integrate all the recommendations into a 7-strategy approach. The 7 strategies are: first, cooling hotspots at high volume weaving areas like North Main Street, Lawrence Way, and Navorna, completing express lane system, increasing bus service efficiencies. 4, apply innovative operational strategies such as adaptive ramp metering and integrated corridor management to maximize the existing system. Preparing corridor for the future of connected and autonomous vehicles, provide better first mile, last mile connections, such as shared mobility hubs to improve transit connectivity. And then 7 is to enhance transportation demand management strategies with mobile apps to help travelers make better decisions about their mode choices. The 7 strategies will be delivered through the 6 projects shown here on the slide, but this morning we'll be focusing on the Express Lane completion project. Currently on the northbound 680, the existing express lane ends at Navorna Road, which is shown in light blue on this map. The northbound express lane project proposes to construct a northbound express lane from Navorna to State Route 242, which closes a 7.5 mile gap in the managed lane system, which is shown in the dark blue dashed line on the map. The project would also convert the existing northbound HOV lane that runs from 242 to the Martinez-Benicia Bridge Toll Plaza to an express lane, and that is the dark blue line on the map. The project also includes operational improvements at hotspots such as Lawrence Way and Treat Boulevard. The project began the environmental clearance phase in full speed in early 2020. Here are some activities that we've been working on for the past year. Due to COVID-19, we held public scoping meeting virtually and provided a longer comment period of 45 days. We've been going through the alternative screening process to determine build alternatives to formally study for environmental document. We have been looking at alternatives that close and reduce the express lane gap. As part of the alternatives evaluation, the project team has been performing traffic analysis to inform our alternative development, as well as coming up with a phasing approach as we may not have full funding to construct the entire project at once. We've been also meeting with stakeholders such as BART involving their crossing structure at Walnut Creek, CHP relating to their existing truck scale facilities at Treat Boulevard, and City of Walnut Creek about the operational improvements proposed at Lawrence Way and Treat Boulevard. This is a picture of the existing condition in the vicinity of the 24-680 interchange, where the existing BART structure crosses over the freeways. This is a picture looking south. The 24-680 interchange presents a couple of challenges to close the northbound express lane gap. First, when the eastbound 24 merges onto 680, northbound 680, it comes in on the left-hand side of northbound 680, making it very difficult for a continuous northbound express lane to traverse through this interchange area from the south. And secondly, the existing BART structure, the columns, are located at on 680 and westbound 24. Shown here is one of the alternatives that we've been looking at closely. This alternative, called Alternative 1C, will close the express lane gap. Again, this is looking south. This alternative can accommodate a northbound express lane through the interchange, which involves shifting the westbound 24 and the southbound 680 roadway to the west, and threading the roadways between the existing BART columns. So westbound 24 will be shifted to the west of the column P10. Southbound 680 will be between P10 and P11. And both the southbound and northbound express lane will be between Piers 11 and Pier 11 and Pier 12. I'm going to flip back from the last slide so we can see the difference here. So compared to other alternatives, alternative 1C, this alternative is superior so far as it does not require removal or retrofit of any BART columns, and therefore we've been looking at this closely. And here is a quick simulation of this alternative. Please keep in mind this is a rough visualization, and we will obviously need more engineering for this, so hopefully this works. So the simulation starts by flying down onto northbound 680, close to the westbound 24 off-ramp here. It shows a vehicle entering traveling on the northbound express lanes. The express lane will start shifting to the left here shortly. The vehicle will continue on this express lane. The car will go through this express lane and will go under a few flyovers. That's part of the existing 24 interchange that we were just looking at on the plan view or on the picture. It's going below the Ignacio Valley Road exit and the merge from 24 to northbound 680. And then next to us here is the southbound express lane just behind that barrier. And the video will kind of do a 180 turn here in a second, and you'll be looking at the southbound 680 roadway, the westbound 24 roadway, and you're looking south again like we were with the picture. So in addition to screening alternatives, staff and the consultant team have been navigating through the new CEQA requirements as a result of Senate Bill 743. And just a quick background, and we've been talking about this for a while, but as a refresher, the law was signed into effect in September 2013. It reformed the CEQA review process of transportation impacts to align with greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. In December 2018, Office of Planning and Research released their technical advisory. Vehicle miles travel, or VMT, was identified as the new metric to study transportation impacts by land use and transportation projects. This replaces the previous level of service, or LOS, metric. Statewide implementation of SB 743 began on July 1, 2020, and in September 2020, Caltrans released their VMT guidance for transportation projects. So here are some challenges for the northbound express lane completion project to comply with the new VMT guidance. First, Caltrans guidance does not establish a significance threshold for VMT increase. This means any increase in VMT by a project is considered significant and need to be mitigated. Because the northbound express lane project is adding an express lane, the project is going to be capacity increasing and therefore will increase VMT, and then VMT induced will need to be mitigated, or we'll try our best to mitigate. The VMT modeling will be required to determine project-induced VMT and also the amount of VMT reductions generated by proposed mitigation measures. Since the project is on the state highway system, VMT modeling and mitigation will need Caltrans approval. And though Caltrans has published guidance to calculate project-induced VMT, they have yet to release any formal guidance regarding VMT mitigation. Practitioners in the industries are navigating questions like what are acceptable mitigation measures, what is the timing of these measures, and the duration of mitigation. And lastly, we have learned that our project is the first Caltrans project to implement the new 743 rules in the Bay Area, if not first in the state, which can be a challenge since there is no sample project or precedent set for us to reference or seek guidance from. Though there are challenges, staff and project team is currently exploring a few strategies to tackle them. First, there are a few projects in the Innovate 680 program that should be VMT reducing and can possibly mitigate for those increased by the northbound express lane project. So these reducing VMT projects are the shared mobility hubs, the part-time transit lane project, and the advanced technology project. We're also looking into VMT banking and exchanges strategies As you know, CCTA received a grant to develop a framework for VMT mitigation program, and the project team is exploring those concepts as well concurrently. Another idea that we've looked or are looking into is whether toll revenues can be used to invest in VMT, reducing projects or programs as mitigation. And though being first to implement SB 743 has its challenges, it may also present us with opportunities as mitigation guidelines are not currently clearly defined. And because we are one of the first to implement SB 743 guidelines, it would be strategic for us to seek legal review and guidance as we continue to progress towards the development of the environmental document to make sure it can withstand any potential future legal challenges. And that leads us to our agenda today, item 5C. In June 2020, the authority approved agreement number 550 with Beveridge and Diamond for general counsel services. The agreement stipulates that additional services beyond the scope of general counsel will need to be authorized by task orders. This morning, staff is seeking your approval of task order number 1 for Beveridge and Diamond to provide project-specific legal services for the northbound express lane completion project. The scope under the task order include legal review and support of identifications of project scope, reasonable range of alternatives, anticipated permits, and any risk to the defensibility of the environmental document, including those related to the SB 743 guidelines. The task order will be funded by SB1 Local Partnership Program formula funding that is already programmed for the current phase of the project. And therefore, staff seeks authorization for the chair to execute task order number 1 under Agreement 550 with Beveridge and Diamond in an amount not to exceed $25,000 to provide project-specific legal services and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for allowing me time to go over the project status, and happy to take any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions or comments?
I see no public comments.
Okay, comments from the committee. You know, I found this, Anil, go ahead.
No, Tom, go, please.
You know, I found this to be a really fascinating presentation, and it touched on a dilemma that, you know, that I've been talking about ever since I got involved with CCTA. And that's the conflict between increasing capacity and eliminating congestion, and at the same time increasing capacity and increasing use of these freeways, and also inducing growth in outlying areas, which is something that we you know, that we don't want to do. And I don't even personally, I found it to be a dilemma. You know, we all want these roads to work as efficiently as possible, and especially when we're the people using them, we want to see them operate efficiently. We want to see capacity increased, but at the end of the day, you know, it may not be a good thing for sustainability. So anyway, I found it fascinating, and I'll really be interested to see how this turns out, and what kind of mitigations you come up with to deal with the VMT issue.
Yeah, as I mentioned, you know, this is very new to all of us and other agencies similar to us and those who are implementing projects. So yeah, happy to continue to keep you all posted on our ideas on VMT mitigation and strategies as we continue to that, try to comply with the new rules and the new world of VMT.
Great, please do. Newell, did you have something?
Yeah, thanks. Maybe this is a question for Tim. And by the way, great presentation. Tim, what's your authority for signing on authorizations?
10,000.
Okay, thank you. So my comment to this is, I love the presentation, but there should have been 2 presentations. The action item here is the $25,000 change order because it's over Tim's authority. And that's simple, straightforward. What I think I'm more interested is to see more and talk more about the concept of the solution, because I don't remember seeing this before to this level of detail. And there's some concerns. It's a great solution, but you know, while there's one theory that this creates an easier way to flow through traffic, but it also is traffic congestion causing. It's going to back up our non-paid lanes. And we know that. The evidence is already there. The tolling lanes that were put in have caused backup in this. You can see it, right? We used to be able to get in, and the fact is there are those who can't afford to get in there. So I'm concerned about that. But in terms of the actual design of this, I'd love to see a dedicated presentation that's just on this. You know, put aside the mitigation portion because that's got to come back to us. But I think those concepts, and we've talked for I don't know how many years to find that solution to get through because of those BART columns. And you know, there's a risk. Everybody in transportation knows when you make somebody make a maneuver at 65 miles an hour to reroute and go a different way, you can see that big barrier on that one view when it starts to push. Why is that barrier there? That's the risk point. As somebody they look down, that's the risk because you're making traffic split. The main traffic goes through. Those are, while it's a technical solution, the other side, there's a risk evaluation is what's the number of accidents? If an accident occurs, what's the implication? Because we used to have the highest accident rate on 680 was between Crow Canyon and Sycamore and on northbound. And everybody would go, no, we don't. And we finally looked at it. Oh my God, it was the highest accident rate. And the problem we know in the freeway pre-pandemic was that there's an accident every day somewhere on 680 between San Ramon and Walnut Creek. And then there's another section between Walnut Creek and Highway 4. But that accident rate was enough that it was taking up to 8 hours to clear a simple accident. Volume of traffic relative to the access, the ripple effect. That the caution is, and it's worth a good discussion to see what are all the alternatives, what are those risk points, what are the delay points, given that we are primarily solving one problem, but are we in fact exacerbating another problem that are going to cause greater and greater delays. So I would just suggest that if we could look at this at a couple of more touch points, that the board could weigh in on really seeing those alternatives, how we got there, and what's a good evaluation of those risk points as we go forward. Okay, great.
So go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Did we, I'm trying to remember, Tim and Stephanie, I know I saw 1A and B and C. Was that at Transpac? Was that at Innovate 680? I'm clearly losing my mind on how many transportation related things I sit on. So I know I saw the other alternatives, and if I do recall this one being sort of the best one of the bunch, was that a Transpac?
That was actually the Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. You know, so Newell, there is a good presentation. We saw it at Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee, and maybe the same presentation could be, you know, passed on to you to see the other options, because this one was clearly made some sense. The concern, and I understand your concern on the swerve. I mean, I get that from when I moved out here and had to do that lovely Caldecott tunnel swerve to get into the tunnel coming from San Francisco. You know, that's, you know, you look down on that and you're going to be mush. And the same thing crisscrossing, you know, 680 north to 242. So we got a couple of touch points. But, you know, once people are used to it, I'm not as concerned about that. I'm really much more concerned. That is a massive, massive project. And are we really solving enough of a problem? Because that's going to be a costly project, shifting 24, shifting 680 to get a stretch of HOV. I mean, I think we have to look at whether that even makes financial sense at some point to do that. You know, and dovetail that off with Tom's point on, is it really getting us what we want to accomplish? So that would be my concern on that.
That was my point too, was while we've seen all of the solutions and everything, this is the first time the board has really seen what that design is going to look like now. And just saying, for all of the both Tom and Sue said, it'd be good to set up a standalone and touch as this project goes forward, so that the board can really weigh in, because we're all going to have different views on that. And as Sue just said, is we ultimately get there, you know, it's going to back up more traffic. And by the way, this board has supported making those decisions to back up traffic in support of putting these in. We all kind of go right. And one of those was how you get in and out, and where you can get in and out on the southbound express lanes. Now made a decision to move it so far forward for several miles that you can't get in or out of that. Yeah, it was going to cause congestion, but it's going to help them. Overall, it's not helping traffic. It helps the person that's in that lane and backs up traffic for everybody else. So those decisions, we have to be honest and just keep having discussions as we see it evolve.
Tim, go ahead. Unmute yourself. There you go.
So Commissioner Argerich and Commissioner Nowak, so we've been evaluating all of these alternatives and really vetting those with the Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee. That's where we have a lot of representation from all of the local jurisdictions that are going to be, you know, really impacted by this project. And so we're actually getting to the point in the process. We have, if you remember, maybe a few presentations I've done, I've seen the governance structure in terms of how we're kind of vetting information and putting the information together. It's been going through the Technical Advisory Committee, the Policy Advisory Committee. We're actually now getting to the point where a lot of this information is going to start coming to the board. So we do plan to your point, Commissioner Armitage, we are actually planning on bringing some more detailed information to the board in the very near future. And the presentation that Commissioner Nowak is talking about, the Policy Advisory Committee, we have done some of the things you've said, Commissioner Armitage, in terms of we've mapped out on the corridor exactly where accidents are happening, where safety is, where we have safety issues on the corridor. We are actually looking at how we can address that with some of the alternatives. The other thing is, that's only one of the alternatives. There are a suite of alternatives that we're actually considering. One of the alternatives is actually not closing the gap, but actually just reducing the gap and not doing that shift. That's another alternative. And we're also in the middle of doing a lot of the technical traffic analyses around these alternatives to really understand, you know, what the real benefits and what the impacts will be by all of these alternatives too. So DKS, our traffic consultant is actually doing all the analyses right now. And so once we get those results, we plan on bringing all this information back to the board so the board can kind of see what the status of all these alternatives are, kind of direction we're going. Alternative 1C, you know, from a, you know, it's still being evaluated. It's just an alternative that we wanted to kind of just present out there in terms of one of the options. The other alternatives that were actually closing the gap, 1A and 1B, as you remember, 1A was a reversible lane alternative. We have now retired that alternative. Alternative 1B was the alternative to move the BART column because of discussions with BART and some of their new requirements. That alternative actually has a lot more risk, and it would actually potentially cost more than 1C, because we would have to go in and actually retrofit all of the existing foundations of the existing structure to be able to meet their new requirements for seismic. And so, so that's why we're kind of leaning towards, if we were going to go down this path with closing the gap, the 7-mile gap, we're kind of leaning towards 1C, but we're also starting to evaluate other alternatives too. And then if none of those alternatives work out, we have the reduce the gap alternative, which is really relying on the improvements between Lawrence Way and Treat to fit that bottleneck. And then you would just essentially have a gap in the express lane system, and you would have continuous weaving from the existing express lane that would have to weave over that northbound connector that enters on the left to get back into the express lane. That would be the reduce the gap alternative, which introduces even more weaving in that area, which really will require a lot of operational improvements in that entire segment of the freeway to really make all that work in terms of reduce that gap alternative. So again, we're evaluating all that. And once we have better information, we'll bring all that back to the board.
Right, that's my ask. I mean, it's obviously Sue's seen more than our board has seen. So think about that. So thank you.
Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak? If so, raise your hand. Don't have any.
I don't see any.
Okay. This is a lot of discussion for a $25,000 item.
Yeah. I move that we approve the $25,000 chapter.
Okay, we have a motion from Arner.
Second, Geringer.
Second from Geringer. Call the vote, please.
Committee Member Arnridge,
Yes.
Committee Member Nowak,
Yes.
Committee Member Thorpe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Geringer,
Aye.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next item, and actually the last item, is Interstate 680 State Route 4 Interchange Improvements, Phases 1 and 2A, Project 6001. Approval to submit Regional Measure 3 Letter of No Prejudice. Hisham will present this item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members, and Happy New Year. I'm happy to report that the authority has successfully competed for funding the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program funds from SB1. At the December meeting, the California Transportation Commission last month awarded the I-680 Highway 4 interchange projects $18 million to design the next phases. Like many other fund sources, this one does require a match. It requires actually a 30% match. This wasn't an issue, however, for this project because the project is eligible to receive $210 million in RM3 funds. Because of the pending litigation against RM3, MTC is not currently allocating RM3 funds. However, we can use our local funds for later reimbursement by RM3 as long as we seek MTC approval for the letter of no prejudice before we start incurring expenses. To ensure the project stays on schedule as approved by the CTC and protect the $18 million that we were awarded, staff is seeking approval of Resolution 2034P, which authorizes the submittal of RM3 letter of no prejudice to MTC. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from committee members? Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak? If so, raise your hand.
No comments from the public.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Nowak?
Second, Geringer.
Motion from Geringer, a second.
All right. Committee Member Arnridge,
Yes.
Committee Member Nowak,
Yes.
Committee Member Thorpe, Vice Chair Geringer,
Yes.
and Chair Butt.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to correspondence and communications. Anybody have anything to say on that? Commissioner and staff comments. Are there any members of the committee who have comments at this time? Are there any comments from the executive director?
So I've got one comment, one announcement. So as you know, Stephanie Hu, she's been our acting director of projects for about a year now after Susan Miller retired. And so she kind of mentioned in her presentation, but Randy and I promoted her to director of projects just before the beginning of the year. So I just want to congratulate her and just well-deserved. She's been doing a great job working on all these projects and taking on a lot of responsibilities.
Congratulations.
That's why she did such a great presentation, right?
Yeah. Congratulations, Stephanie.
Okay. Is there any other business? before the committee this morning? Hearing none, we're adjourned to the next regular meeting proposed for February the 4th, 2021 at 8:30 a.m. And this meeting is now adjourned at 9:45. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
And
Thank
have
you.
a nice-
Stephanie, say hi to Eric for me.
have a
We
nice
miss him,
day.
we miss him in Pleasant Hill.
Have a happy new year.
Happy New Year.
Thank
Happy New
you.
Year.
Guys.